Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Margaret Andrews. Margaret is a seasoned executive, academic leader, speaker, and instructor. She's created and teaches a variety of leadership courses and professional and executive programs at Harvard, and is the founder of the Milo Center, a private leadership development firm. She's worked with clients like Amazon, Citi, Continental, Walmart, and Wayfair, and is the author of a great book just about to be released, Manage Yourself to Lead Others, Why Great Leadership Begins with Self-Understanding. It's a great book, just finished, and I think you're going to like it a lot. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that we judge ourselves by our intentions and other people judge us by our behaviors. So we may have great intentions for being a good teammate, boss, leader, whatever, but people will actually judge us by our behaviors. And when I discovered this, it gave me a lot more empathy for other people that had been my boss before, that they were essentially learning on me, that they probably had very good intentions and sometimes their intentions didn't match their behaviors.
I think if you boil down this book to one essential truth, it's that you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself, right?
That's right.
And really having that understanding about who you are and how you lead and the impact you have on others is crucial to one's leadership. And failing to understand that essential truth can be, as you say in the book, one of the greatest leadership derailers.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
It goes back to this. If we don't understand ourselves, it's hard for us to understand other people. And if we can't manage ourselves, we don't really have the credibility to ask other people to manage themselves, right? So if we understand and manage ourselves, we are in a position to be able to understand other people and to develop them. And a big part of that is understanding when we do the work to understand ourselves, it helps us to understand that we are very different from lots of other people. And that many of our differences are actually our features, not our flaws. And that the more we can lean into some of these things, we can become the leader that really only we can be. And then the other is that if, as I say, if we don't understand ourselves, we can't really understand that other people are different. And, I learned this lesson really truly by having kids. And, I have 3 kids, had never done much babysitting before I had kids of my own. And I remember as I was leaving the hospital with my firstborn thinking, if they knew how little I know about what I'm going to do, they would not let me leave, right? That would be child endangerment. But they didn't know, and they let me take him home. And I had to learn everything. You're nodding, so I think, you know what I'm talking
4
about
boys,
here.
yeah, 2 in college now. So yeah, it's a learning still.
Oh, big time, right? And so, the second one wasn't like the first one. So I had to learn, about both of them as individuals. Then when the third one comes along, I think, oh yeah, I got it now, right? Oh, no, they're totally different. And also, you said you have kids in college. No one ever told me that your relationship with your kids changes over time too. And when they go to college and graduate, right, they need something different from you. So it totally mirrors the leadership journey.
Yeah, my wife and I were just talking about that point the other day with friends of ours who just sent their first to college. And one of the, I think, real shifts that happens at that age and stage is moving from command and control to a coach and connect, which is true of parenting and it's also true of leaders as well. But getting that strong sense of who we really are, not just as leaders, but really as people, as you say, is very difficult work. Mm-hmm. And in the book, you provide a list of 6 questions to help us reach a greater understanding of ourselves, that self-understanding. And the one question that leaped out at me, and this will come as no surprise to regulars here on the show, is what kind of feedback have you received about the way you've impacted others?
Yes.
And I love that question because really at the end of the day, we are always impacting others. We just might not be aware of it.
Yeah.
So how can leaders get those hard truths that often seems so hard to come by?
So let me just back up just a moment, right? The 6 questions, and one of the first questions is about who and whose thinking and ideas have influenced you, right? Because the context matters. Our backstory is important. But the other, and the question right before the one you mentioned is about, how well do you understand your emotions and how your emotions impact other people? And so the feedback one, interestingly, I did a test before I did the book, and I took about 25 people and I had them go through all the questions. And then I asked them at the end, I said, which one was the most useful to you? And they said it was this, a lot of them said it was this question. And they said because it really reflects back on all the other questions, right? There's your Aunt Jane coming out of your mouth, right? When you're in this situation, or, oh gosh, that's my Uncle Bob. But it's also about, in the feedback, it's, are there trends? Are there common themes, that have been there all along? So feedback is really important. And sometimes it's hard to get. And the higher up you go in an organization, the less you're really going to get. You're giving more and not receiving it. And so sometimes you just have to ask. You can do things like where your team evaluates you. And so it's a team thing. So nobody, feels that they have to bear the brunt of being the one to deliver the news. But the other is, I think, is just really training yourself to watch other people and what's your impact on them. When you give feedback, are they flinching? Are they nodding an acknowledgement? How are we impacting people? So I think A, you should ask for it, and B, you should also try to look for it. And, another place to ask for this is actually people that your friends, your spouse, and these kinds of things. And if you're really gutsy, sometimes your kids.
Yeah, that is the feedback that you probably need most, but are most afraid to ask for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those hard truths are the most important ones very often. So even if leaders get to that place of greater self-understanding, they know what to do. They don't necessarily actually go ahead and do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right, what sometimes would be called the knowing-doing gap, right?
Yes.
That derails this growth. So what are some ways, and you give a bunch in the book, but what are some of the ways that leaders can turn insights into impact?
I also ask 3 other questions, and I think this is very related to it. I first ask, what kind of leader are you now, right? All those 6 questions feed right into that. But then what kind of leader do you want to be? And then, of course, what's the gap? What's the delta? What's going to get you from point A to point B? And then you have to prioritize. You're not going to change everything overnight. So it's working on one at a time. And it is really, I talk also in there about mindfulness, the idea that you have to be mindful to understand how you're feeling. So for example, if you and I are having a disagreement, I might feel anger coming up, or frustration, or anything like that. So I have to be mindful in the moment of what I'm feeling, but also I need to be mindful of how I want to be. And so if I respond to you in anger, that's probably not going to further our discussion or our relationship, right? It's going to put you in a corner, and then we have a different problem. So that's where I think mindfulness is the bridge between self-understanding and self-management. And you're right. If you think self-understanding is hard, which it is, right? It takes some courage to shine that light inside and sometimes see things we would rather not see. It's where the rubber meets the road. What are you actually going to do about it? And very, very often people go, oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. And so I use this exercise in class a lot of times. I say, how many of you know that you should listen fully and intently to people, right? Everybody's hand goes up. And I
Every
say,
hand.
yeah, and I say, okay, keep it up if you do this consistently. Most hands drop. And I say, right, that's the knowing doing gap. We know what we should do, but we're not doing it. And if you know it, +1. If you do it, +101. So it's that difference.
Part of the job of being that kind of a leader who is effective and can actually build the capacity of others is setting, but also siding with an organizational's culture.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the distinctions you make in the book, I really like this one, is the distinction between being a culture maker and a culture taker. Can you tell us more about that and why that line in particular is so difficult for leaders to navigate?
Yeah. So the culture taker, you are joining an organization and you are joining that culture. A culture maker, which is in general the CEO, you can change it. Now, again, that I'm talking about big companies, and it is true to a greater or lesser extent in smaller organizations. So the idea is that if you're going to join a company, you are joining culture. There's a culture there. There's a way they do things, a way they think about things, the way they interpret the world. And it may be different in the marketing department than it is in R&D, right? There are subcultures and things like that. But you are joining a culture. You are probably not going to change that culture because there's just years of acculturation that has gone on in this organization. And all of the systems are behind that about, who you hire, where you hire from, what works, what's effective, who gets promoted, and for what reasons. Most of us are culture takers. And that I want to make one point here because this oftentimes gets misconstrued. I said something about this one time a couple of years ago, and somebody said, I get it. So culture takers are just lazy. And I said, no, that's not it at all.
Not how you put it. That's not what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the idea is that to be a culture maker, you have to have the control over the levers to change culture.
Yeah, you're in position to shape it.
Exactly. You're in that position. So can you set strategy, how we do things, how the work gets done, systems, our rewards and recognition, these kinds of things. So very oftentimes, and this happens all the time, you'll hear the leader of an organization say, we want to be more collaborative. And then the next person that's promoted is somebody with very sharp elbows. And I say, well, that just went out the window because you showed you didn't really want that.
But even within those smaller organizations, you still have to figure out a way to sort of take those cultural signals and broadcast them out to your team so that that culture can live inside that pocket of the organization or within the company. So it's important for leaders really at all levels, whether they are setting the culture from the very top or bringing the culture to life from their point within the organization, to pay attention to how they're doing that and how effectively they're doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not just saying it, it's backing it up, right? Because people will pay much more attention to what you do than what you say.
So we rarely get better all by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that occurred to me throughout this book, and it really is a great book, is that even though much of the work of reaching self-understanding is inner work, it's driven by the leader, there's a role here for mentors and coaches. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the role of others to help promote that sense of self-understanding and how they might be most useful to put these practices to work.
Yeah. So you're right. We don't get better all on our own. And we have to, often ask for feedback and really listen to what is being said. And, there are times when, and I've had people in organizations reach out to me and say, I like your style. Would you mentor me? And I, of course, that's super flattering. And to the extent that I could, I did. So you can ask too, but you want to be, it has to be a partnership, right? And ideally, our boss is one of our best coaches and mentors. And, I run this exercise about people's best boss. And one of the big things that comes up as to why somebody is their best boss is because they mentored them, coached them, etc. In fact, one of my favorite ones that came out of one of those exercises was somebody wrote on their Post-it note, they said, this person helped me grow and glow. And I thought, oh, that is lovely, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. So if we hopefully can be that for other people, but we can ask other people to help us. We can ask our boss, how did that go? Hey, I'm working on this. I'm trying to speak up more. I'm trying to, get more people to speak in meetings, etc. And ask, how is it going?
And I think one of the most hopeful messages of this book is that no matter where you find yourself in your career, whether you are a seasoned leader or just starting out on your leadership journey, there is an opportunity to do this inner work to reach greater understanding of who we are. And it's really never too late to actually become the leader you're supposed to be.
Absolutely. I have people in my classes, I would say the average age is somewhere between 35 and 40, but I have people in their late 20s through their mid to late 60s. And I just love that because we all learn from each other, but it also shows everybody that you start where you are and that's where you're starting and you can go where you want to go.
As you say in the book, your backstory doesn't have to be your end story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But your backstory is important. So it's good to know it.
That's no doubt. No doubt. The book is Manage Yourself to Lead Others. And the author, and I think she's done a great job of bringing more understanding to this topic, is Margaret Andrews. Margaret, thanks for sharing your wish.
Thank you for having me. This has been very fun.